It doesn't matter whether you grew up in the 80s with bright colours, big hair and Care Bears, the 90s with Trolls and Game Boys, the 2000s with low-rise jeans and Disney Channel original movies, My Little Pony has probably been a part of the cultural sphere. Or if you're like me and you had probably too much unrestricted internet access as a child, you're definitely familiar with the world of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, the 4th generation cartoon created in 2010. Surfing the web for early 2010s memes or scrolling endlessly through DeviantArt's pony creator. But what if those ponies were no longer ponies?
And it says down here, rarity, dull and pony scent.
In 2013, Hasbro released My Little Pony, Equestria Girls, a spin-off movie that focused on Twilight travelling to a human world. Basically, it was a canon version of what if these characters were human, a fairly confusing concept when trying to justify it in coexistence with the main show. But it would go on to become a multimedia franchise with sequels, shorts and specials, a huge doll line, game tie-ins and more, but not without brony outrage. So let me take you on a deep dive through Equestria Girls to see where the franchise came from, how it evolved, and where it stands today. Firstly, it's important to have a context on where My Little Pony came from and the cultural impact it had in the 2010s. MLP was first introduced in 1982 with the popular toys created by Hasbro. These ponies were unique for their fantastical, colourful bodies and the small designs on either side of their flanks, later dubbed cutie marks. Ponies were iconic throughout the 1980s but revamped across many generations over the years with different takes on the toy line and various cartoons, mostly straight-to-video specials. In 2010, creator Lauren Faust, who grew up with the original ponies, revamped the franchise into its iconic 4th generation in the 2010s. Now the ponies had a serialized TV program that engaged its target audience of young girls in the world of Equestria to engross themselves in the wide range of toys, playsets, figures, books and magazines. I was right around the age demographic for MLP when it came out and I was obsessed with it. I loved the characters. I would save up for the little blind bag ponies and the brushable ponies, which I still think are really cute today. I still have all of these blind bag ponies, they're just so nostalgic. What was surprising though is that My Little Pony actually began a cult following of adults, typically straight male adults. I don't think I'm breaking new ground when introducing the idea of bronies, but from the perspective of a child or a tween who was also a fan around this time, it's very interesting to look back on. MLP became a cultural phenomenon unlike anything before. Now there were huge conventions across multiple countries and a large fandom culture. Fan fictions, fan-made episodes and animations, handmade merchandising, and of course hundreds and thousands of pieces of My Little Pony fan art. I loved making pony OCs, which was essentially placing yourself or like an original character into the universe of the ponies, and I have some of my own fairly atrocious Microsoft Paint drawings with DeviantArt bases from when I was younger. Let me know any memories you have of growing up in the wild west of this fan base. Humanizations, often referred to as gijinkas, are pretty common in fandom culture as people interpret how their favourite non-human characters would look as a human, which became a popular trend among bronies. With fans of all ages, it also meant that merchandise was selling lots, and Hasbro were looking at this, interested in ways to expand the franchise. Taking inspiration from all the fan art of human Pinkie Pies, Twilights and Fluttershys, in late 2012 plans were coming together for an accompanying franchise of full-time students and part-time magical pony girls, the Equestria Girls. All the brony dreams were about to come true, as an official humanoid spin-off was announced to be beginning with a 2013 feature film. I think it's safe to say that this was kind of an outlandish premise. It's strange for a show to officially acknowledge this kind of fandom phenomenon and turn it into its own world, but it makes sense as a way for Hasbro to break into the fashion doll world and expand their pony empire. But I was there to eat up everything Hasbro fed to me, so I eagerly awaited the day I could play my Equestria Girls DVD on repeat. As designs were officially announced, I would be in the minority as they proved shocking and divisive initially. The girls had extremely long, slender legs with chunky statement boots, exaggerated, colourful hairdos and skirts with their individual cutie marks as a motif. Their faces had huge, bulging eyes that looked like their pony counterparts, with sharp faces and small noses. But what was most shocking is that the characters still had their outlandish skin colours. This is where I point to a little brand called Monster High. This was another popular multimedia doll line from the early 2010s that I'm sure you've all heard of. These dolls were revolutionary to the doll industry and incredibly popular with their unconventional style, a darker aesthetic, and strong characters and world building. Monster High was not quite as alternative as people have made it out to be, but it was definitely more focused on unique characters and concepts, particularly with fantasy skin tones and hair colours that gave way to more creative design opportunities, as the whole theme was that these were the children of mythical creatures and monsters. This design philosophy happened to be a strong fit with Equestria Girls, which was arguably Hasbro's answer to the growing competition. A brony blog from the time shows that a majority of fans didn't like these new designs and had no intention of buying the toys as early prototypes leaked. Some called the designs sexist for featuring overly thin bodies, some were frustrated at the prospect of a cliché high school setting, and others stressed about the ramifications this had for the deep world of equestrian lore. I have no doubt that a lot of people criticised this for the wrong reasons, but there are some valid points to be made. For example, unfortunately, as with most doll lines and girly franchises, there's a lack of diversity in body types. Every character has the exact same proportions. This makes doll production more streamlined, but limits the ability to have a cast with diverse design. With a doll, you're selling that character, and different body types and proportions can tell you so much about someone and provide representation for those watching. I just think, in general, I don't know, something does feel a little bit weird and slightly off about this. Maybe it's edging into that uncanny valley feeling. This is definitely something straight out of the early 2010s, and looking back today, I don't know what to think. But in June 2013, the film would debut at the LA Film Festival with a limited theatrical run and eventually on store shelves and TV. So Equestria Girls was kind of weird, right? This film begins in the pony world, taking place shortly after the season 3 finale, which granted main character Twilight the privilege of wings and title of princess. This was a hot topic in the brony world, with many arguing it broke the integrity of the show or was a desperate attempt to market toys, so this was doubly contentious. As a girly media connoisseur, I do find the argument made to sell toys pretty unsubstantial at times. Bratz Kids Fairy Tales isn't going to be the next Citizen Kane, so it's more useful to look at these things in the context of what they are, which is, we're all about bringing out your inner child here anyways. Twilight and co are visiting the Crystal Empire, but things go wrong when a mysterious pony snatches Twilight's crown that is then blasted through a mysterious portal that the thief, called Sunset Shimmer, jumps into. The magical Princess Celestia tells Twilight that Sunset was once a student of hers too, and that the mirror is a portal to another world that Twilight needs to brave in order to retrieve her crown. But her pony friends can't follow. This is because Twilight would go on to meet the human counterparts of her friends in this world. Celestia, something is going on here. First of all, how does she know about this world, and how much does she know? How was she possibly supposed to know that the rest of the main six couldn't go through, but Twilight could? Initially, it's not really explained why there's no human Twilight here, but that's a plot point later on in the series. Spike the dragon turned dog ignores the princess and jumps through anyway. And here we are, the human world, and Twilight is now magically in her preppy, marketable outfit. You have to just run with a lot of things in this film. Does it really make sense? No, but does it need to? Her style leans into academia with a puff-sleeved shirt, pleated skirt, and argyle leg warmers, which coincide with her love of books. You'll also see that upon comparing to her pony counterpart, the skin tone, while still unrealistic, has been lightened, a trend you'll see a surprising amount of these characters follow. Twilight struggles to navigate the world in typical fish-out-of-water shenanigans, and this is a musical. For one, the opening title that remixes the theme song is iconic. In my tweens being chronically online, these random YouTube nightcore intro music songs were like my jam On a pony-related note, Discord by the Living Tombstone, and the Equestria Girls title still scratches my brain today. But yeah, the first song is about Twilight adjusting to this world. I don't know who this background character is, but I love her. From there on out, Twilight goes on to meet her human friends, forming the franchise's iconic lineup. Pinkie Pie, the excitable element of laughter, has her large curly hair, big baby blue boots with ribbons and a pink, blue and yellow colour scheme. Rainbow Dash is a sporty, tomboyish character, so a common complaint people have is that she probably wouldn't wear the skirts and poofy dresses that she's put in. Fluttershy is the timid element of kindness. Her colour scheme is great, but I think something more flowy like a long skirt would suit her a lot more than a sleeveless vest and short skirt. I think Rarity, element of generosity, translates fairly well to this form, with diamonds and sparkles being a motif. Her entire personality is meant to be fashion, and I love how every character in these animated movies who are meant to be super fashionable were dressed up in Claire's couture. It's kind of iconic. Applejack, the honest farmer girl, is decked in big cowboy boots, a denim skirt and a cowboy hat. These designs are definitely something, but you begin to appreciate their charm in hindsight. I'm interested to hear from other people in the comments what you thought about these designs and which one is your favourite. It's animated entirely in Flash, as the show was, obviously still at a TV level as opposed to something higher budget, but for what it's worth, there are creative elements, and as divisive as the chosen style is, the animation itself is fluid. The voice actors have also done a fantastic job, considering some of them voice multiple characters. I think this is definitely an underappreciated art that goes into developing these multimedia worlds. Sunset Shimmer, the villain for the film, is probably the best designed of them all, and I don't think it's much of a coincidence that she is the one designed from the ground up. This art style works a lot more in the background characters unique to the film than the ones spotted out as homages to Ponyville. It feels like in any given frame you could point them out. Twilight confronts Sunset in the corridor, and we find out that she's been residing in this world for a while and built a strong reputation at the school, Cancelot High. She's kind of the mean girl, but also the popular girl, but also she doesn't really have friends. How did Sunset adapt to this life so easily? Was she not homeless? Does she have any legal documentations in this world? Who is she living with? How is she affording a house, food, trendy clothes, and being a high school student? Twilight's crown had been found by Fluttershy, who handed it to the principal, where it's now the prize for winner of Princess of the Full Formal. So kind of a prom queen situation, except Sunset has been ruling the award and is on track to win again. So Twilight goes to the principal's office to be met with Principal Celestia. Okay, so surely this world is more than a high school, right? Like, wouldn't Celestia and Luna's counterparts in the human world just be queen, or at least president of some kind? Life beyond high school surely exists here, right? It also poses the question, how old are these characters back in the pony world? You would assume that they're high school age from the human counterparts, but from what I gathered when watching Friendship is Magic, most of them live on their own, have their own jobs, and Twilight is seemingly old enough to be an Alicorn princess. Why are they in high school now that they're through the portal? Okay, well, I do know. High schools are obviously marketable to a tween-age audience and provide a steady setting, so it's another thing you have to accept. So Twilight runs for prom queen to get her crown back, which is urgent seeing as the portal is only open for another 3 days and the dance is slowly approaching. If Twilight fails, the portal will close for another 30 moons. So how long is a moon exactly? In this urgency, the girls come up with a plan to get more votes for Twilight by doing a flash mob song and dance ordeal in the cafeteria. This changed lives, guys. The cafeteria song was iconic. It's an earworm for years to come. The ponytails and ears are so random. I mean, it's not to us, but to this world, they have no clue that Twilight is a magical pony princess. So is this supposed to be some kind of perfect coincidence? I don't know, but this was the movie's big moment where everyone turns on Sunset. Flash Sentry is a character in this movie. He's this cool guy who plays a guitar and is a royal guard in the pony world. So he and Twilight have somewhat of a thing, constantly bumping into each other. This is where we return to the crazy brony fandom who are outraged about his inclusion, calling him generic, pointless and empty. Yes, it's cliche. Yes, it's not expertly written or a subversive masterpiece, but also we're talking about a film called My Little Pony: Equestria Girls. I can't get mad at these criticisms. They have some weight, and I'm going to be pointing out discrepancies with the series the entire video, but like, Flash was a little overhated. Cut him some slack. Maybe after rewatching some of the newer content, I grew more of an appreciation for his himbo personality as opposed to just being the guy that Twilight has to like because this is a high school film. There were a subset of fans who had feelings for the pony characters and were upset when this fantasy broke down, but for the most part this was a pretty silly controversy in retrospect. Sunset tries to frame Twilight, but our King Flash is the one to spot the fake photos. The night comes and everyone is dressing up in their glittery, sparkly outfits. I would be lying if I said these weren't a bit of an eyesore. They're camp. I'll just say that. The other songs that play around here all have very generic lyrics that do their job and are pretty fun. Sunset threatens to smash the mirror, the only way back home, and in a battle for the crown, as Sunset manages to grab it, she turns into this crazy monster that can only be destroyed by the magic of friendship and pony princess transformations. I thought this was the coolest thing in the world, exactly what my childhood self signs up for. Eventually, Sunset shows remorse and Twilight heads back to Equestria. This movie is not that great from a critical perspective. The logistics make very little sense, and it's down to personal taste as to whether the art style is interesting to you. But I have strong memories for it, and as a young person proposed with the idea of your favourite cartoon characters becoming human, it was a fun and sparkly new take.
Twilight sparkles, a princess who shines, fluttershy, so sweet and kind.
The film is only the beginning of the Equestria Girls world, which was a goldmine for dolls and other merchandising. A live-action music video featuring young actresses playing the role of pony-inspired characters heavily featured in the marketing for the brand. This was a staple to any kid who had or wanted the Equestria Girls dolls. I remember every lyric to this day. This just screams 2010s. It reminds me of the Fright song video for Monster High and sits at a staggering 73 million views. First and foremost, Equestria Girls was intended to be a doll brand. So how did they turn out? Well, most of these dolls were poor quality with moulded on tops, cheaply made clothing, little articulation and strange designs overall. The design was already contentious in animation form, but translated into strange dolls with deep facing expressions, highly saturated and contrasting colour palettes, and less than creative fashion choices. In many doll collecting communities, these are regarded as unappealing and low quality. I don't disagree with this, they're pretty uncanny and odd. To me, they resemble cats more than ponies, and there was very little cohesion both in terms of the colour and style choices, but also the lack of continuity with on-screen counterparts. These first releases were a struggle bus, as production of dolls typically coincides with a very early development of animated media, as both take a while to produce and factors along the way can leave the two appearing distant. A cheerleading set, an edgy emo Pinkie Pie, and double sets with a pony and a doll. Why do Celestia and Luna look like teenagers? What is this? At least Luna's doll accurately represents her pony skin tone as opposed to the strangely inverted colour scheme in Equestria Girls. In 2014, they released new signature dolls. They still had plastic tops and a not so high quality production, but captured the girls in their recognisable looks. Maybe it's my nostalgia because I had a few of these, but in my opinion, they're a lot more cute than the overly rainbow, multicoloured messes that some of these dolls ended up being. I think these are fairly sweet and cohesive. Equestria Girls was one of the few doll lines I got into collecting as a child, mostly because I loved MLP, so a lot of these are pretty nostalgic to me. The crown jewel of Equestria Girls dolls was the Sunset Shimmer and Twilight Sparkle double pack featuring the crown. Okay, maybe it's not your crown jewel, but it was definitely mine because these are the first Equestria Girls dolls I remember getting. I'd never had dolls with articulation before, so I thought this was the coolest thing ever. I actually dug up a video of my childhood self unboxing this doll. We all did this, right? I'm not alone.
Twilight Sparkle. Oh my god. It's like a full formal dress, really. This is in comparison with the Sunset Shimmer pony. So yeah, that's, as you can see, she has articulated arms, which is so cool. Awesome.
I captioned that video, they're 20% cooler, by the way. And here we are now. These are from Vinted, a second-hand site, and not my childhood dolls, but I wanted to relive the memory and also give you all a closer look at what these dolls look like. I'm loving how full circle my life has come right now. Let me know if you had any of these original dolls and whether you liked them. Equestria Girls was clearly successful. Even though the writers had intended it to be a standalone film, a sequel and of course accompanying dolls were in production. But before we get into that masterpiece, the movie that changed my brain chemistry, I just wanted to thank you all so much for over 8,000 subscribers. I never would have expected to reach this in the first month of my channel. I'm so lucky to have people that appreciate all the love I put into my videos. If you are enjoying, please leave a like to show your support. If you want me to unlock more childhood memories, then please subscribe so that you never miss another upload.
Welcome to the show. We're here to let you know.
The next year, in 2014, the second DVD, Rainbow Rocks, was released. I think that this was so fun, and so many of the iconic moments have been permanently plastered into my brain. And honestly, the music went so hard. The film starts with these three girls, Adagio Dazzle, Aria Blaze, and Sonata Dusk, known as the Dazzlings, the villains of this film who use their voices to absorb energy and control those around them. Back at Cancelot High, Sunset Shimmer is struggling to fit in and redeem herself in the eyes of her peers, and plans are commencing for the school's musical showcase where the main five plan to perform in their band. For some reason, whenever the girls sing, their pony transformations occur for that magical, quirky touch. Enter the Dazzlings once again. These girls have some of the most interesting designs in the series. Cluttered, yes, but very fun. In the cafeteria, they use their hypnotizing vocals to cast the school under their control and turn them against each other in a battle of the bands. Rainbow Rocks going unnecessarily hard with its music, Exhibit A. So Sunset Shimmer actually has this book that allows her to make contact with the pony world. So back in Equestria, where Twilight now has this whack castle, we find out that the Dazzlings are actually sirens from Equestria, but obviously they're just perpetually teenagers in this world for some reason. So she manages to craft her own portal and the group is all together, but now Twilight has to come up with a counterspell to defeat the Dazzlings. Slumber party break. Tensions are rising amidst the main six as they can't seem to work together and balance each other's priorities. Also, I feel so bad for Sunset Shimmer. They let Twilight be a part of the bands. I guess she had to for the spell, but Sunset is just sitting watching on the sidelines the entire movie. It's kind of sad. So the battle of the bands commences and the Dazzlings pop off. Rainbow Rocks going unnecessarily hard with its music, Exhibit B. And Trixie, who was a pretty popular character in the fandom, only appearing in one of the really early episodes that I remember, has a very iconic song that will randomly enter my brain sometimes.
You better believe I got tricks up my sleeve. See me dominate, 'cause I'm powerful.
And the full version on Spotify is even better, so Exhibit C. But the main six were unfortunately sabotaged and flopped their performance, only just managing to advance. Over a montage, all the other bands are eliminated, including Flash Sentry, who is in this movie again. We're down to the semi-finals with just the Dazzlings, Trixie and the Rainbows. This does mean we kinda hear the same songs on repeat. Trixie is eliminated, but pulls a lever during rehearsals that opens a trap door the main six fall into. And with the girls still arguing a bunch, the magic of friendship starts to wear off. Spike saves the day, and in a huge music battle, the Dazzlings and Rainbows blast their magical powers against each other in a highly intense showdown full of magical girl transformations, brightly coloured hair, and the magic of friendship. This is definitely Exhibit D of Rainbow Rocks going unnecessarily hard with its music. But only with the help of Sunset Shimmer, who finally gets her pony transformation, can they truly defeat the Dazzlings. Sunset became one of my favourite characters throughout this movie, which was definitely intentional from the writers as she gets a strong and cohesive redemption story. Not to mention, she's the only one with an actually decent outfit. I don't know why Equestria Girls was allergic to good outfits for its musical finales. These these are, something. But it's definitely in line with the nostalgic magic of friendship rainbow explosion this franchise is. This movie is camp. It was so enjoyable to revisit. It's currently free on the official My Little Pony YouTube channel, so if you're looking for some nostalgic fun, I would definitely recommend. The music was genuinely entertaining for a dull tie-in, and the villains gave it a strong hold in the story department. It's my personal favourite Equestria Girls film. Alongside it, Hasbro released several shorts, only a few minutes long. There were also 3 additional music videos with unseen original songs, including a Sunset Shimmer solo, My Past Is Not Today. Rainbow Rocks going unnecessarily hard with its music, Exhibit E. This definitely should have been in the film in my opinion. It's like a Disney I Want song. It has strong emotion that accompanies Sunset's character, and considering the limitations, it's so fully realised in the animation.
New Rainbow Rocks dolls, each sold separately. Check stores for availability.
Rainbow Rocks was the largest doll line to be released, and it suffers essentially the same issues. I get the line is called Rainbow Rocks, but this is too much colour. They're already colourful with nothing else, but when you add multicoloured hair streaks, split colour tights printed on, huge cutie marks across the face, headphones that ignore their pony ears, and crazily coloured outfits, you're doing way too much. For example, the Fluttershy single doll. I don't know why they had to choose such a piss yellow for her as opposed to the soft colours that fit her personality. Her wings are a slimy neon green with a moulded high neck vest and a cheap sparkly skirt. Fluttershy would not wear this, and I'm struggling to imagine anyone who would. This Applejack dress up set has a huge blood red apple tattoo over her eye, a neon cowboy hat and a plastic blue necklace with a bow, a green gingham dress with red sparkles, one leg is bright red and the other is luminous green with whatever these shoes are. There are elements of Applejack here, and the dress could have been cute was it not for the rest of it. There were a ton of other wacky, crazy dolls that I'll show on screen. I'm interested to hear from others who had these as a child. Were we all that blind and just appreciated the amalgamation of colour? I'm not genuinely mad at these dolls. I actually think they're kind of funny in an endearing way. It's just wild to look back at the sheer weirdness of them all. They released a few background characters too, like Vinyl Scratch with a car, and of course a huge stage playset. But I do adore the Pinkie and Twilight Slumber Party dolls. They're some of my favourite Equestria Girls because they're just simple and cute. Sleepover dolls are just fun in general. The dolls of the Dazzlings are also pretty cool, but the box art depicts them as ponies when I thought the sirens we see are their equestrian counterparts. Back in 2013, Hasbro of course launched an interactive Equestria Girls website advertising the brand, which had flash games like Canterlot High School Dash, where you're running around as Twilight in a 2D setting doing tasks back and forth. To tie in Rainbow Rocks, a bunch of music-themed flash games were released. They all have the staple animations and sound effects you can find from this type of game. A personality quiz, I got Twilight. This is so... This one dress-up game where you mix and match wild hairstyles and accessories lets you put a picture of yourself to rockify. Rainbow Rocks was definitely the most intensely branded era. In the movie's post-credits, they also tease the next one by answering a gap in the movie's logic. Where is the human world version of Twilight?
We're gonna take you down. We're gonna take you down.
Following on the yearly release strategy, in 2015, Equestria Girls Friendship Games released. By now, I was on the edge of outgrowing MLP, but I do remember catching this one's release, although I don't remember owning any of the dolls. In this film, Canterlot High are preparing for the Friendship Games, a sports and academic event that happens every so often between their school and the Shadowbolts from Crystal Prep, who win every time. And at Crystal Prep, one of these students is Twilight Sparkle, or at least her counterpart from this dimension, who's differentiated by her glasses and referred to as Sci-Twi by fans. This is where my questions start to rise again. In film 1, the portal resides in the Crystal Empire, but is said to have travelled from Canterlot, but the main series takes place in Ponyville, where the main 6 live. Seeing as the Equestria Girls High School is called Canterlot High and Luna and Celestia are principals there, it's not a stretch to assume we're in the human world equivalent of Canterlot. And maybe the portal just doesn't change its outcome when moved. But Why would the main 6 all be at Canterlot High if this is the human world equivalent of Canterlot, when they live in Ponyville and a lot of the background characters are also Ponyville equivalents? So when Crystal Prep is the rival school, an obvious hint to the Crystal Empire from the Pony world, which both share Cadence as a ruler, it's interesting that's where Sidetway goes. And spoiler, at the end of the film she transfers to Canterlot High, possibly a reference to the pilot of Friendship is Magic where she moves to Ponyville. Is this high school actually Ponyville? Seeing as Luna and Celestia are thousands of years old in Pony World, are these some kind of descendant? And while we see human Twilight, surely a human Sunset Shimmer would exist somewhere out there. Are there just 2 versions of her running around? So when the shadow boats arrive, New Twilight has built a contraption that seeks out magic, which ends up capturing the magic from the girls ponying up, which seems to occur whenever they activate their element of harmony. This later causes problems when she grabs Sunset's magic near the portal, which ends up closing it off completely. Twilight doesn't really fit in at Crystal Prep, not wanting to partake in the friendship games and dreaming of Everton, an independent study program that she's applied for. She's also bewildered at the fact that everyone confuses her for Equestrian Twilight. From this, she starts bumping into Flash Sentry again, and this bit has been going on for 3 films without really going anywhere. She also makes friends with the main 6. Fluttershy in this crazy protective costume is iconic. Twilight sings an I Want song, which is kind of cute, but it's not as good as Sunset's. As the friendship games begin and they battle in various activities, tension rises as the girls try to withhold their powers to keep the games fair. The montage song that plays over the games is another earworm that has the same Battle of the Bands, Rainbow Rocks, pitch perfect energy. Definitely my favourite from the film, with some fun and sweet visuals and silly character moments. The Crystal Prep characters have pretty nice designs too, and it's fun to see a new variety. I don't think this film is quite as fun as Rainbow Rocks, but I appreciate that each had distinct theming, new ideas about magic, and navigated the high school setting in an interesting way, even if they're mostly cliches. This being the first film to not prominently feature Twilight travelling across dimensions was a good decision in my book, as Sidetway was an interesting, new but old character. It's not something to write home about, but for a franchise like this, it's good to have kind of fun content to engage with the characters. During the relay race, Rainbow Dash accidentally powers up, so Cinch, the principal of Crystal Prep, accuses CHS of cheating. Throughout the film, she's been a manipulative and controlling character who is way too determined to make these teens win a silly school competition. She eventually gets her own full-on villain song as the group pressure Twilight to release all the magic she's captured, to essentially fight fire with fire. So in the final event, she transforms into the magical Midnight Sparkle, reminiscent of Sunset at the end of film 1, and is overcome by evil desires. Sunset then destroys her device, granting her the magic form of Daylight Shimmer, who defeats Midnight by offering her the magic of friendship. Sunset is pretty much the core of all of these movies, and this reflects her demonic form in film 1, so it's a full circle moment to her character arc. I'm not even going to question the logistics of all the magic. Friendship Games was another fun Equestria Girls movie that answered an important question, even if that ends up opening a plethora of others. The line of dolls for this movie are still not great, but a few of them are a little cute, particularly the newer characters. When they're not plastering rainbows everywhere, I can see a kind of strange appeal to some of these dolls. They finally released a doll of Flash who had moulded on hair, and I don't know, he's kind of giving. A budget line of very basic dolls with half moulded hair were also released around this time. Obviously they're very cheap, so you get what you're given, but I'm a little terrified by these. Okay, so I'm making this insert to kind of compare the dolls and acknowledge some of the improvements. Just looking at the faces, I think that these feel a lot less jarring and uncanny. Now, this is a Midnight Sparkle, so probably not the best example. And yeah, I don't like the clothing, but they do have full articulation and in the knees, just like Monster High dolls did around about here. But that was typically dependent on the doll's pricing. I just wanted to give props to the Friendship Games line for kind of giving better base dolls in my opinion. But anyway, back to the video. A key play element from these dolls was integration with the all-new My Little Pony Equestria Girls mobile app. In this game, you got to customize your own Equestria Girls avatar in a typical early 2010s, pretty goofy looking animation style, and then navigate around Canterlot High doing fetch quests and performing fairly simple tasks. This game is a goldmine for jankily fun animations and all around feels kind of like a fever dream. It had 3 chapters based on each movie at the time, and you could play mini games like archery, roller skating and motocross, as well as DJing and an ingredient catching minigame. I never actually liked this game, but maybe it wasn't all too fulfilling because I didn't have the dolls with special scannable necklaces that would grant free items, coins and more. I'm curious if anyone else remembers this in all its creepy 3D model glory, especially seeing as it was removed from the App Store with little mention or uproar. Also, in that MLP Town Builder app that's been getting updates for like 10 years now, there's a little rhythm-based game in there based on the instrumentals from Equestria Girls, which we need to appreciate. The 3D models and animations are if you get it, you get it. This game was absolutely iconic. The fourth and final feature, Equestria Girls Legend of Everfree, released in 2016. In this film, the new main 7 are on a field trip to a nature camp owned by Gloriosa Daisy and her brother Timber Spruce, who ends up having a somewhat romance with Sidetwi that doesn't lead anywhere. That's one problem with this film. There's probably a little too much going on, but I still think it had a kind of cozy feeling. After 3 movies, it was fun to leave the school, and I found a lot of the outdoorsy elements sweet. The girls are all excited about their plans in Camp Everfree. There's a legend about a forest spirit called Gaia Everfree who was angered at the camp's construction and threatens to plague it with natural disasters, which subsequently ends up happening, to the stress of the Equestria Girls. And would it be an EG movie if the characters don't get random magical powers for whatever reason? In this film, Twilight is struggling with her inner saboteur after the ending of Friendship Games, and after developing telekinesis, she's scared that the magic of Midnight Sparkle is corrupting her. Sunset starts to believe that it was actually Timber who's been staging Gaia's attacks, but later on, it turns out to actually have been Gloriosa in an on-the-nose twist. She'd failed to keep up with the payments of Everfree's land to Filthy Rich, who wanted to turn it into a spa. She'd come across some magical geodes that granted her earth-bending powers that initially caused the disasters, so she made the legend up. And it's an Equestria Girls movie, so someone needs to transform into a magic monster corrupted by dark magic at the end, where Gloriosa takes on the form of Gaia Everfree as the girls try to fight back, but Twilight is scared of being corrupted again. Now you know the drill, the magic of friendship saves the day, and the film ends with a fundraiser to keep Everfree afloat. This film is okay. I'd recommend the other 3 over this one. It's a little convoluted and all over the place, but if you enjoy these characters, it's fun for the most part. I thought Flash Sentry was one of the highlights of the film.
Cool story, bro.
Also, someone give the crew for this movie a medal because I thought the outfits were okay this time around. Rainbow Dash is finally allowed to wear jeans and leggings. The animation is competent throughout the series, but I noticed it started feeling a lot more natural and fluid here, which possibly came with time. Even though this was the last film, Equestria Girls didn't die out, it just shifted to different forms of media, which we'll get onto now. Of course, there were new Everfree dolls. I see the vision for some of these, like the boho-line Fluttershy and Applejack, but quality issues stayed the same. Eventually, as the era of films ended, so too did the era of fashion dolls. These were the last of the original lines to be released, probably for the best.
Play a game? Hide and seek? I know! Introducing the all-new Equestria Girls mini dolls. Playsets and dolls each sold separately.
In 2015, they released the new Equestria Girls Minis line. These new figures were stylized with huge heads and small bodies and various points of articulation. I think that these are very cute. Each genuinely feel like the character has jumped from the animation as opposed to just being another cheap, colourful doll. For example, Fluttershy has a softer colour palette and a reserved expression. She actually looks like Fluttershy. Pinkie Pie still has big hair and an expressive face. Sunset Shimmer is actually allowed her outfit the way it's animated, and every character's huge boots work a lot better with these proportions. Each mini was streamlined and cohesive. They nailed the colour palettes and did a fantastic job in the moulding of exaggerated hairstyles that can't be translated into a fashion doll. I just think they're neat, but I understand it comes down to personal preference with these. The unconventional proportions probably weren't everyone's cup of tea, and it depends whether you value the ability to brush your doll's hair or change its clothes. Whereas with these, being smaller in size, they could focus more on play features and accessories, such as really cute slumber party sets where Applejack has double braids and Rarity's hair is in rollers, Pinkie Pie in an art class or a hair salon with removable hairdos, Twilight in a lab, Fluttershy in a pet spa, Applejack in a smoothie shop. A huge variety of characters were released, like a full formal box set. I kinda don't hate the outfits as much when they're like this, but the Rainbow Rocks line, yeah, maybe not. I know I said that was my favourite movie, and it is, but it definitely had irreversible repercussions when it came to the franchise's design choices. Fan favourites like Starlight Glimmer, Derpy, Trixie and Bonbon all look cute. It's no secret that bronies ended up becoming a huge market for MLP merchandise sales, seeing as they're adults with their own incomes as opposed to kids who are balancing their pocket money around whatever interest they have that month. We saw the effects of this with the Guardians of Harmony pony toys, which were more serious action figures, and it's possible that also led into these Equestria Girls dolls who could be displayed and organised. Like I said, I'd stopped following Equestria Girls back then, so it was a delight to find these because I think they're really sweet and make me appreciate the characters a little bit more. I'd love to hear if anyone owns these or what you think about them in comparison to the fashion dolls. I also had no idea Equestria Girls media went past the movies. There's a plethora of other animated specials and webisodes to delve into because the franchise was kept alive pretty much until Generation 4's ending in 2019. The first of these were 3 22-minute specials. In Dance Magic, Rarity is organising a Ream Boom's music video to enter into a competition to raise money for Camp Everfree, but the Shadowbolts from Crystal Prep are entering the same competition and steal her idea. Human Twilight was becoming my new favourite character. Considering she's supposed to be the nerd, her style is probably the best out of these girls. The second special, Movie Magic, has the girls on set for a Daring Do movie, which was a book series in the Pony Show, and the superhero outfits are also based on another episode. Mirror Magic crosses over with the ponies as Sunset's journal runs out of pages, and Princess Twilight's new student, Starlight Glimmer, comes to the human world, the crossover we never knew we needed. Shortly after, a series of 16 shorts, each a couple minutes long, aired on Discovery Family and later on YouTube, mostly with quirky animations and character interactions. I never got why these three were in a high school. Some were original songs like Mad Twilights, which was a Frankenstein parody, and I recommended this one out of all of them. It's pretty catchy and quirky. And remember how I asked about what Sunset Shimmer's home life looks like? Well, in her song Monday Blues, we see her home, which seems pretty cozy. I'm impressed that a high schooler can afford this. I really don't understand the situation here. In late 2017, a set of choose your own ending style interactive shorts saw the shenanigans behind running a school play. While these were only about a minute each, it's not often that a cartoon has interactive elements like this. Now there's a whole multiverse of Equestria Girls timelines out there. What's considered season 1 of Equestria Girls Better Together is a set of 27 shorts, all under the 3-minute mark that ran from November 2017 to October 2018. It's nice to see these characters live out normal high school lives without equestrian magic involved all the time. Equestria Girls was definitely a bit of a mishmash around now. They were releasing all kinds of fragmented media left, right and centre, mostly shorts which for the target demographic are harmless and sweet. I think these girly multimedia franchises are better suited to episodic stories than trying to pump out a new movie every year, that way you can just focus on the characters. Despite being so divisive in the beginning, I think Equestria Girls started to find its footing by existing in its own little bubble outside of having to be a film, if you understand. But I never got why they didn't just make a standardized cartoon series as opposed to a bunch of shorts with a few specials here and there.
Shimmer. Twilight Sparkle.
The Equestria Girls are back with looks as fierce as their friendship. Dolls each sold separately, other items not for sale.
Remember when I said Equestria Girls stopped producing fashion dolls? Yeah, that was true for a while, but 2017 saw an all-new rebooted doll line. There was now articulation in the arms, the faces were more expressive, and they weren't as lanky. Something is still a little bit creepy about these. On most accounts, I should prefer these to the originals. The colours seem more balanced, there's no plastic tops, but I don't know, they just don't seem to hit the same. For one, a lot of the details and hems are printed on, but that's pretty standard around about now in budget lines like this. They're not bad, they're sweet enough. I respect what they were going for, but I don't have that nostalgia and I've never really seen one in person to fully judge. Only a few of the dolls were ever produced and the second wave had awful pre-posed arms with no articulation. Like, this huge set of each of the main 7 has such awful cheap clothing. Stephen Sumner, a Hasbro designer at the time, has actually revealed some of the prototype dolls for this line. I much prefer the faces for these than the ones we got. They tested using headbands for the pony ears instead of having them permanently on. I love this Fluttershy prototype and this version of Rarity, but it was deemed too suggestive by higher-ups. It's interesting to hear a little behind the scenes knowledge on the doll's production and how they wanted a slightly edgier spin, so I'll leave a link to his Instagram post down below. A few 44-minute episodes released in 2018 and 2019. They're nothing groundbreaking, but the animation had for sure improved. It felt like the crew were able to experiment and just have a little fun this time around. In Forgotten Friendship, a spell is cast that removes any positive memories of Sunset Shimmer, meaning her friends still see her as the mean girl. We get the unlikely pair of Trixie and Sunset and a brief return to the pony world in this one. A new character called Wallflower, who's on the yearbook team, is introduced. As her name suggests, she's shy and easily fades into the background, although she manages to make her presence pretty confidently throughout this special, and of course she then turns out to be the villain. There are sweet moments, but they can also be very predictable and cookie cutter. For example, the next one focuses on social media and technology, which had every generic piece of dialogue you could think of. Spring Breakdown was one I enjoyed though. They were so unserious, giving Rarity this love interest that looks like a gender swap Applejack with the goofiest British dialect.
By golly! That's real copper it is!
And his name is Ragamuffin. The names in Equestria Girls and MLP are incredibly strange when you think about them for more than a second. Obviously, they tie into a character's personality, but it's odd thinking about a parent looking at their newborn and naming them Wallflower or Filthy Rich. Is it just a self-fulfilling prophecy that they get to choose the outcome of their child's personality, and how their names often happen to coincide with their cutie marks when that's not something you're born with? It of course makes sense from a design perspective, it's just interesting to think about. In this special, Sunset, Sideswipe and Reboot discover a new portal to the pony world, which brings up some interesting questions. When Sideswipe goes through the portal, she has no wings. Of course, Pony Twilight was born without wings, but she gains them later on. It's just odd that when Sideswipe ponies up from the magic of friendship, she has wings then. How much do these universes actually mirror each other? I don't know. Season 2 of Better Together and more choose your own ending shorts released throughout 2019. A lot of these took a page from Barbie's vlogger era and made sort of faux video tutorials, let's plays and vlogs from the perspective of these characters. An episode is entirely focused on Snapchat filters, another is all about boomerangs and Instagram. At the start of the franchise, it was never too focused on mobile phones, but that was in 2013, and by 2019, this was the way all multimedia franchises were trying to appeal to children. But on a side note, I found it interesting to see new locations like the characters' bedrooms. The final special, Sunset's Backstage Pass, that takes place during a festival, came out in summer 2019, around the time Friendship is Magic started to close off. In November, the final piece of media, Holidays Unwrapped, which was a compilation of Christmas shorts, ended the series. Definitely a confusing mash of media by the end. Honestly, I'm surprised the franchise managed to last this long, but it seemed to have a stronger sense of identity by the end. The true end was with a comic released by IDW Publishing in early 2020, and in the awkward gap between G4 ending and the new 3D pony generation on Netflix, a few new figures were released, kind of cheaper versions of the minis with box art in the pony life art style, which is kind of cute, but the toys are a little weird. Equestria Girls was odd. But now that everything is over, the idea of this franchise was fun in practice. There are a lot of things I would personally change. We probably should have gotten natural skin tones, but Equestria Girls was an interesting side gig for a 2010s phenomenon, and by the end I knew I loved these characters. Now that those of us who grew up on G4 are nostalgic for it, or just reliving our MLP phases, I've seen a lot of lovely fan art from people reimagining the characters and restyling them with new designs. Seeing as the ponies are onto a new generation, it seems that Equestria Girls are following them. There's leaks for humanized dolls of the G5 characters, Sunny, Izzy, Zip and Pip. The design philosophy seems pretty much the same. They're colourful still, but seem more young looking, and it's hard to tell, but there may be a slight variety in body types. I'm not keeping up with G5, but the EG dolls seem cute enough. Although nowadays the doll market is very fashionable and a lot more competitive, although I'm sure these will find their audience somewhere. Let me know all of your experiences with Equestria Girls in the comments below. Did you know just how much content was released? I'd love to know if you collected any of the dolls or which era you started with. If you want more content like this on nostalgic worlds and franchises or random things that interest me, subscribe so that you never miss another upload. Keep spreading love and hopefully you'll see me in my corner of the world again soon.